Hello and welcome for an exciting new episode about talking about Stoicism. Sorry about that. We're going over the More Letters by Seneca. I'll stop saying like this because it gets really obnoxious really quickly, doesn't it? More Letters by Seneca. Letter 57 is where we have landed, and I'm not entirely sure I have an incredibly clear interpretation of this letter, but I want to read it to you anyway because it's so beautiful and evocative. The imagery Seneca uses, the way he describes what is happening, I found it wonderful. Remember that Seneca did not like boats, right? Because we talked about that a couple letters ago, that he jumped off this boat and swam to the shore because he was so nauseous, seasickness. Letter 57 from Seneca to Lucilia's greetings. When I had to leave B.R.E and head back to Naples, I did not attempt to go again by boat. They said there was a storm and I was easy to convince. He shows his humanity, right? Like, I just don't like boats, so they said there was a storm. I was like, all right, no problem, don't worry. But there was so much mud all along the road that you might think I had floated my way there after all. That day I had the whole of the athletic regiment to put up with, for we went right from the mud into the dust of the Naples tunnel. You can apparently still see the entrance to this tunnel, which connected those two cities. Now, this description I found beautiful. Nothing is longer than that dungeon, nothing gloomier than those torches which only enabled us to see the darkness, not see through it. Even if there were any light in that place, the dust would have blocked it out. Dust is a terrible annoyance even out in the open. What do you suppose it was like there, where it billows up onto itself and, enclosed in a space with no exchange of air, sinks back onto those who stir it up? Thus we endured two contrary discomforts at once. On the same road, the same day, we struggled with both mud and with dust. Still, the darkness did give me something to think about, for I felt a kind of impact on my mind, and, though without fear, a change brought about by the newness and unpleasantness of the unfamiliar circumstance. And now I'm not speaking about myself, for I am far from being even a tolerable human being, let alone a perfect one, who isn't, but about that person over whom fortune no longer holds sway. His mind too will be struck, his colour will change, for there are some things, dear Lucilius, that no virtue can escape. Nature gives the virtuous person a reminder of his own mortality. So he will change expression at sad events, and shudder at sudden events, and grow dizzy when looking down from a great height. This is not fear, but a natural reaction which cannot be assailed by reason. Thus, some who are brave and very ready to shed their own blood cannot look at that of others. Some grow faint when handling and inspecting a fresh wound, others at an old and infected wound, and there are yet others who can bear the stroke of a sword more easily than the sight of one. What I felt then was, as I said, not an emotion, but only a change. As soon as I got back to the light of day, my cheerfulness returned without thought or bidding from me. Then I began the old conversation with myself about how foolish we are to fear some things more and some less, when all of them have the same ending. What difference does it make whether a person is crushed under a falling balcony or under a rock slide? You'll find there is none. Yet some people fear the rock slide more, though both are equally fatal. For fear looks to the cause rather than the effect. You think I'm talking about the Stoics, who hold that the soul of one who is crushed by a great weight cannot persist through that event and, since it has no immediate egress, is scattered in an instant. But that is not what I'm doing. In fact, I think those who say this are mistaken. Just as a flame cannot be crushed, for it escapes around whatever presses upon it, and just as air is not harmed by the punch of a fist or the crack of a whip, nor is it even split up, but merely swirls around whatever stirs it, so the mind, being made up of a very rarefied material, cannot be caught or broken up within the body, but owing to its fine texture, passes through the very things that press upon it. As lightning strikes and flashes over a wide area, yet finds its way back through a tiny opening, so the mind, which is even more thin-textured than fire, can escape through each and every body. Hence we should make some inquiry as to whether the mind can be immortal, but of this at least you may be sure. If it does survive the body, it cannot by any means be crushed, for there is no sort of immortality that admits of exceptions, and there is nothing that can harm what is eternal. Farewell. I particularly enjoyed this description of this dark tunnel with torches. I specifically love the sentence where he says it didn't allow us to see anything but the darkness. They don't actually light up anything. It's still super dark. And the whole image of him walking through that dark tunnel only to be covered in dust that's just billowing up. It's very easy to picture the images that he is evoking, that he is describing, and I really think that's amazing storytelling. It's remarkable that so long after these letters were written, they can be so timely and still evoke so many feelings in us. Anyway, that was obviously not really what I wanted to talk about. But his conversation is fascinating because he seems to be, I'm not sure if he himself had a very clear image of what he wanted to write about to Lucilius, because it goes from death to the mind, and the mind maybe being immortal or lasting longer than the body. So it's I found a somewhat confusing story beyond that. But what I found very interesting was kind of a parallel I had to think of. A book that I have mentioned before, the Hagakure, which was a manual for samurai. And there is a wonderful, it's all kind of little sayings and small short passages and anecdotes, etc. And at some point that book states that there is something to be learned from a rainstorm, because when it suddenly starts to rain, people start to run to get home. But the author describes how by doing certain things like passing under the eaves of houses, you still get wet, right? There's nothing to be done. So what you really should do, so the author says, is just keep walking. So don't start running. Don't try to, again, seek cover under the eaves of houses. Just run, because you'll get the same soaking in the end. And for some reason, I don't know if it was the image of this dark tunnel, but for some reason I had to think of that, which, when you think about it, that specific analogy used in the Hagakure is a very Stoic viewpoint, right? You can't control the rain. What's the point in starting to run or whatever? Just keep going. You end up just as wet as if you would have tried to seek shelter somewhere and have to look for shelter running around, etc. And maybe the reason I was reminded of that is because of what Seneca says about different ways of dying. You can be crushed by a falling balcony or under a rock slide. In both cases you die, and in both cases death is certain. It doesn't matter, right? I mean, how you died anyway. Because we've spoken about the principles of death and dying a number of times. It's a very common theme in Marcus Aurelius, whose meditations we went through before this Seneca series. I kind of wanted to focus more on that other principle of being determined. I think that is a very important aspect of Stoicism. Be determined. Don't try to run away from the rain, but if it rains, then walk through it, keep walking, keep going. And that, of course, is just an analogy for other things that happen to you in life. If those things are within your control, then you can control them, and by controlling them you can change them, and therefore there is no need to be upset. If, on the other hand, you cannot control those things, well, then there is nothing you can do, and there is little to be upset about. It will be the way it is, because it is entirely not under your control, right? So the difference between those two things, I think, is vital. And having the determination to say, well, this is happening. I can't do anything about it. I will keep going. I will work through it. I will move through it. I will keep going until this has passed. I think it's a very Stoic approach, and a very useful approach, an approach that can really help us dealing with the smaller or maybe medium frustrations in life, the super big things that can be harder, and they're certainly are situations you should not stay in, but should move away from. But having said that, that I think is vital. And I wonder if Seneca was kind of using that image of a dark tunnel as an analogy for that, right? You go through something, it's dark, it's unpleasant, it's not enjoyable, but you continue to move forward. And then at some point you are out of that tunnel and everything, the sun is out again, everything looks a lot better. I think we can all relate to dark tunnels that we have been through in life. This may have been a substantial overthinking of the image, but I was just captivated by the dark tunnel and the billowing dust and the torches on the walls, and that was just a fascinating image. I did not know, and that's just a hole in my understanding. I did not know the Romans had such tunneling technology, which is fascinating, that they actually were able to connect two cities through a tunnel. I mean, that's, when we think about how advanced that civilization was, it's remarkable. Anyway, these are my ramblings for the day. I hope this was useful. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about how you get through dark tunnels in life. And I'll see you again next time for more talk about Stoicism. Bye.